Welcome back to the deep dive. Today our mission is all about maximizing how you learn. We're going to take that classic model, the learning pyramid, and really break it down.
We are.
The big question is, where does AI fit into all of this? I mean, are these new tools actually making us smarter? Or are they just a high-tech shortcut to, avoid real understanding?
That is the core issue, isn't it? And it's important to frame this. Think of our discussion today as a sort of thought starter for where we are in 2025.
Okay.
When you ask where AI belongs, the answer is kind of complex. It's both nowhere and everywhere. And we'll use those percentages from the pyramid. But remember, they're just concepts, right? They're not hard numbers.
They're more like a guide to show how much more effort you need to put in.
Exactly. To move from just passively consuming something to actively learning it.
All right, let's start at the very bottom of that pyramid then, the most passive stuff. We're beginning with audio-only learning. The retention rate here is estimated to be only about, 5%?
5%. And we all instinctively know why, I think. It's the ultimate passive form because it's just one sense. It's just hearing.
Right. You're trying to multitask.
We all do it. You put on a lecture or a deep dive like this one while you're doing the dishes or driving. Your mind is it's wide open to distractions. And that 5% can vanish in a second.
Totally. I've had a 2-hour lecture on in the background and then realized at the end I retained literally nothing. But the analysis makes a good point, that even a tiny bit of activity can help.
Like taking notes.
Exactly. If you're listening, but you force yourself to jot down a few words, you're engaging your motor skills, creating a sort of physical anchor for the idea. It pulls you out of that pure passive state.
And this is where we hit a really interesting tech problem right now. If you try to make audio learning interactive, so you pause it and ask a quick question,
the response is too slow.
It's often sluggish, yeah. That fast back-and-forth conversational feel just isn't quite there yet unless you're paying for a premium service. It's a hurdle AI hasn't fully cleared for audio.
So we shouldn't just abandon it completely then?
No, absolutely not. There's a great old quote, "The ear is the gate of learning." Listening is always, always better than doing nothing. You just can't rely on it to master something complex.
Okay, that makes sense. So that brings us to the next step up the pyramid, reading. This one has a conceptual retention of about 10%.
A little better.
It's not totally passive, but it is still just one sense. And we've all done that thing the sources call word shredding, where you're just skimming pages and you realize you have no idea what you just read.
To get past that 10%, you have to add an action. Reading out loud helps, it slows you down. Or even better, you summarize what you've read in your own words. That's the key to moving it into long-term memory.
But this is where AI has a genuine breakthrough. We said conversational AI struggles with fast audio.
Right.
But written chat, with platforms like ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, that is already an incredibly powerful tool.
It is, and its power is in the customization. You can ask for clarification, sure, but you can also go off-piste. You can explore related topics that aren't in the textbook, which really helps lock in the main idea.
And you can change the level of the explanation.
That's the most important part. You can customize it on the fly.
Can you give us a really concrete example of that?
Okay, so let's say you're trying to learn about blockchain. You can ask the AI to first explain it to you like you're a high school student with zero knowledge.
Okay. Simple analogies.
Right. Then, in the very next prompt, you can say, okay, now explain that again, but use the technical jargon for a university computer science student. A human teacher can't do that for 30 different students at the same time.
That really does solve one of the biggest problems in education. And if you zoom out a bit, there's a really encouraging insight here. If you just read 3 good books on any subject, you are almost guaranteed to know more about it than most people.
Even with just 10% retention from each, the total knowledge you gain is huge.
Okay, so let's move up to the middle of the pyramid. We've covered the passive stuff. What happens when we start engaging more senses with, say, audiovisual formats, AV?
Right. Things like a documentary or a lecture with slides. This deep dive, for example. You're combining sound and visuals.
And the brain starts making stronger connections. The sources mention that AV material can generate something like 400 to 500 times more brain activity than just reading.
That sounds enormous.
It does, but you have to question that number, right? Is that just more brain activity, or is it actually better, more efficient activity?
That's the right question to ask. The material clarifies it's about mobilization, not necessarily efficiency. It just means The brain is working hard to link what you're seeing with what you're hearing.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And we also know that an enthusiastic presentation style really matters. That kind of engagement can boost retention all by itself.
So the practical takeaway is pretty simple. If a concept is hard to picture, find a video or an illustration. If you can see how something works, you'll understand it on a different level.
And that leads us right into the next step, demonstration and physical reality.
So now we're moving beyond just pictures to seeing something happen in the real world. A classic chemistry experiment, for instance.
And the learning gets even better when you're the one involved in it. You're not just watching, you're actually handling the equipment, engaging with the reality of it.
This feels like a perfect place for AI and VR to come in.
Absolutely. They can create virtual learning spaces that would be too dangerous or impossible to access otherwise. Imagine being able to walk around inside a nuclear reactor or visit a historical landmark that no longer exists.
You could even run a simulation of a World War II battle. It stops being a lesson and becomes an experience.
And that's the core insight, isn't it? The quote goes, what we see, we understand. What we experience, we never forget.
Exactly. So now we're moving from watching to actually doing. And that seems to start with talking about it.
Yes. We're now in the active core of the pyramid, starting with discussion and group work.
Discussion is so effective because it forces you to actually formulate your thoughts into clear sentences. You can't just passively absorb it anymore.
And you have to consider other people's viewpoints, which makes you process the information much more deeply.
The sources say the best groups are non-homogeneous. So groups with different skill sets.
Or groups that are just ambitious. They want to go beyond just passing the test. They're aiming for real mastery.
So where does AI fit into this? If you have a small group working on a problem, do you just make the AI another team member? The sources say a definitive no on that one.
Absolutely not. The AI should not be the one giving the final answer or solving the problem. If you do that, you're just weakening everyone's own critical thinking.
You're breeding intellectual laziness.
That's the risk, yes. The tool becomes a crutch.
So what is its role then?
It's best used as a moderator, or maybe a catalyst. You use it to get the discussion started, to suggest a perspective the group might have missed, or to raise a debatable point. It should never, ever provide the final solution.
Because the learning comes from the debate itself.
True understanding comes from being able to ask your own questions and see the topic from multiple angles.
Which leads us to the highest level of doing, practice and experimentation. This is where you really deepen your knowledge like a carpenter or a programmer.
And there's a really crucial distinction to make here. Practice is not just repeating what you saw someone else do. That's just imitation.
Right.
Real practice is experimenting. It's changing a variable, trying a different approach, and seeing what happens, and, more importantly, understanding why it happened.
This seems like a perfect job for an AI guide.
It's perfectly suited for it. If you change something in your code and it breaks, the AI can explain exactly why that specific change caused that specific error. It's instant personalized feedback.
And that solves the biggest challenge in education: personalization at scale. A teacher can't create 30 unique assignments for 30 students at different levels.
But an AI can. It can generate a task that is perfectly adjusted to each person's skill level and then gradually make it harder.
That's huge.
Yeah.
But it also creates a new challenge, doesn't it? Now the teacher has to grade 30 unique assignments instead of one standard test. It completely changes the educator's job.
It does. But the principle holds. Real knowledge comes from doing and from getting intelligent, personalized feedback on that action. And that action takes us to the very peak of the pyramid.
Teaching others.
Trying to explain what you know to someone else is arguably the most powerful learning tool there is.
Because you have to understand it from your own perspective, but you also have to anticipate where the other person might get confused. You have to see it from their side too.
It forces you to structure your knowledge. The sources bring up that old saying, he who can does, he who cannot teaches.
Right.
And while maybe an industry expert who codes for 8 hours a day has more depth than a teacher, the act of teaching itself dramatically deepens the teacher's own understanding. It's an incredible learning process for them too.
So it's not really about who is more capable. It's just confirmation that you learn the most when you try to teach.
Exactly. And that brings us to the big takeaway here. Cooperation, not substitution.
The final synthesis.
Look, AI is part of life now. It's like the internet or the calculator. Banning it from schools is just, it's not going to work.
So the focus has to shift. We have to teach students how to use it correctly.
Yes. We need to move from asking the AI, what's the answer, to asking it, why did my experiment fail when I did this? Or what's a counter-argument my group hasn't considered?
You use it to enhance your own thinking, not to replace it.
If you just copy and paste a solution, you learn nothing. Zero. But if you cooperate with it, you can accelerate your learning massively.
This has been a fascinating journey. We've mapped that path from just passively listening all the way up to actively cooperating with AI as a personal tutor and a guide for experimentation.
We're moving from a world of learning with limited tools to learning through this incredible technology. And that leaves me with one final thought for you to chew on.
Okay, let's hear it.
Building on this idea of AI customization, if an AI can perfectly personalize the learning path, the content, and the feedback for every single student, what skills will human teachers and mentors need to master to stay relevant? What is their role? Beyond just delivering a curriculum that an AI can now deliver better, what new human skills define a great educator in that world? Something to ponder.